There's a conundrum in life that teaches us to avoid hardships, to be joyful no matter what, and that happiness be the ultimate goal. And in this film's case, it's to avoid painful memories. And there's a good natural instinct to it, but it has a paradoxical layer. It assures our safety for survival, but it also inevitably limits us from ever growing. Honestly, we avoid hardships, the past unpleasant experiences, more often not for survival, but because we want to ensure our happiness. For the short term, it's the best solution, but in the long run, it's a terrible one. We're actually better off facing our adversities, confronting our traumatic past. As counterintuitive as it might seem, bad memories are actually good for us. That's the profound lesson of Inside Out 2. Now, this isn't a critique of the film, and in truth, the movie tries to juggle in threads of ideas and stories beyond the script, and often leaves them unfinished. But it does set a beautiful note at the end, a melody that dictates we face our sore past. Most, if not all of us, are taught at a very young age to fear failure and forget the bad days. Hence, we inevitably fill ourselves with sweet lies, when reality and our expectations divulge. Because modern society is constructed in a way to prioritize happiness. But that's not always possible, and rather leads us towards desperate routes and means to ensure happiness, no matter the cost, even if that means accepting pleasant lies. That's a common feature of our generation. For instance, social media promotes us to highlight our best moments and tell the world of our feats, but it never leaves room for anything beyond those cherry-picked moments. Only the best of the best is meant to be glorified. I meticulously remember how a friend of mine once described Instagram. He told me, Instagram is a platform where you share your best moments. It's such a profound and concise description which encapsulates the platform that even its flaw is pointed out without obscurity. It only shares your best moments. And there lies the fault. We aren't only our best moments though. Sure, the good times are part of us, but they're rather an infinitesimal fraction of our labyrinthian lives. We post the good moments, the worthy pictures, but delete and subdue those we deem unfit. In other words,
we keep the best and toss the rest. Whew, nice work.
But beneath the idealistic iceberg we display to the world is where our true self resides, though we never show that on social media. Now, I'm not saying that we should. Of course, there are things you should never publicize. But the irony is, we hide those flaws even from ourselves. It leads to a concession that social media can never tell the full truth, and hence it can never be an accurate or even good description of an individual. And there's an intricate parallel between that and the message of this movie. We hide the harsh reality of our being, not only from others, but more crucially even from ourselves. That's the story of Riley. Her belief system was carefully designed through the best and noblest memories, her sense of self built from a handful of selected cores. But that's where the fundamental issue occurs. It's not the full picture. Her sense of self wasn't true.
I'm a good person.
That's not to say she's not a good person, she could be. But that's not all Riley is. Cause there were challenging thoughts and memories which would defeat that sense of herself, which she chose to avoid. Her emotions created excuses to avoid unpleasant confrontations.
Like this penalty one. It's weighing on her, so let's lighten the load. A one-way expressway to... We're not gonna think about that right now.
The thing about Inside Out is, it truly captures how our inner psyche works. In the mind, our emotions sometimes act as external forces which navigate our lives. They seem to be beyond our control, and hence find ourselves battling with them to make the morally correct choices. But those emotions act rather as messengers for all our buried guilts, fears, and secrets. They're the medium our incognizant mind expresses of all that plagues us. That's the primary core of the Freudian psychology, that our lives are dictated by the unconscious psyche, and that unconscious self is constructed from our past, especially those childhood traumas and bad memories we bury deep within. But it eventually catches up with us. The baggage of our unconscious becomes too heavy to carry, and consequently spills into our lives through the conscious self. Just observe how things change in this story. Riley was such a joyful girl because she chose to be happy, hence why joy is the main leader. In the first film, her inacceptance of change inadvertently repressed sadness, and that sent her towards a spiral of chaos. But she learned from that at the end and acknowledged her feelings. But now an even more complicated issue arose. She learned how to acknowledge her feelings, but not her past. Riley's constant chase to be happy pushed her down a path of memory repression, trying to forget the unpleasant memories and choosing to bury them deep into the unconscious. But that all catches up with her, now unraveling in the form of anxiety. Anxiety that her friends will leave her, that she'll be alone in high school, fear that she won't make it into the Firehawks hockey team. In the story, anxiety became so dominant and took control of Riley. All those years of oppressed memory started to fill in the form of negative emotions, primarily this character. Even her willingness to be happy would no longer suffice now. Well, there's a counter-argument to this though. Didn't puberty trigger these new emotions? Yes, it did. Puberty did trigger those emotions, but they were never meant to be dominant and hijack Riley. Anxiety wouldn't have taken control over hadn't Riley been in denial of all those unpleasant events. The fear of losing her friends, not making it into her new hockey team, the panic of not being the best player were manifestations of an already troubled self. The burden she carried in her unconsciousness unraveling in her current life. Anxiety wouldn't also have destroyed Riley's old sense of self had it been built upon strong foundations instead of cherry-picked weak memories. By merely removing the tree of her beliefs, everything fell apart, and Riley's conscience never grew a new one to replace it. She instead became easily susceptible to the bad thoughts anxiety planted, as all the unconscious guilt was already plaguing her. It all culminates with Riley having a panic attack, and a dysmorphic sense of self.
I'm not good enough.
Anxiety pushed her down a rabbit hole that almost destroyed everything. And then the profound lesson unveils. In spite of all the pain we endure, our burdens and guilts can't grip us forever. Ultimately, neither our unconscious emotions nor psyche will dictate our beliefs. They don't choose who we are. Only our conscious self does. The message that I love comes to play here.
You don't get to choose who Riley is.
Oh no, not that one. This one.
But you're right. We don't get to choose who Riley is.
The movie culminates with the acceptance that Joy, and more specifically Riley, was wrong from the very start. We aren't, or at least shouldn't be, the product of our emotions. When we prioritize happiness over everything, we resort to desperate means to maintain it. And for Riley, that meant repressing any and all memories that defeated her sense of self. But that gave birth to the inner demons which inevitably disrupted the harmony. They ended up killing the one thing she prioritized, we prioritized over everything. Our joy. We are often taught as little kids to prioritize happiness, to see it as the holy grail of our existence, to be pursued at all costs, hence marking an age defined by the endless chase of a rather fleeting emotion. But the fact is, there are lots of things in life which derail our happiness. Illness, troubles, and lots of others disrupt it. We can't always be happy. But at the very top of the enemy list of our joy is ourselves. We act in ways that do not align with our identities and beliefs, and evidently guilt grips us and happiness flees, and hence was joy being the ultimate pursuit of our lives. We do everything and anything in our conscious power to maintain it, even if that means repressing the truth about ourselves. We deny those painful memories to assure our selfish self that our mindset, beliefs are right,
I'm a good person.
that what we are doing is correct, to ensure our happiness, even if it comes at the price of denial. But that's never a lasting solution. Our past, the truth, always catches up. It's when we deny the truth, the past, painful memories, that our unconscious psyche takes control. It projects all those negative emotions back. We become anxious, miserable, unhappy. We start living on autopilot that we ourselves can't even rationalize.
Anxiety is making Riley break into the coach's office.
What? She knows better than that.
As counterintuitive as it might seem, Our conscious psyche is designed to reject lies. We are inherently built to seek truth. That's how our mind works, with or without our consent. Lie detectors are made from the very principle that our body exudes psychological responses when we lie. Forensic science also delves into that principle for analysis of deceivers. And psychology has preached for nearly a decade now that our psyche aches from the uncomfortable truth we shy away from, we do not face. We can only be truly happy when we accept all of our past, both the good and bad memories. Carl Jung, the pioneer of analytical psychology, encapsulates it perfectly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to direct your life, and you will call it fate. The film's message really sinks a tune to me, perhaps because I faced similar circumstances too. For me, high school was a very tough time, specifically the first half, a period of hardships and challenge, plagued by pain. I had falling out with friends and everyone around me at the time. I changed schools after that and drifted from a lot of close people, including my best friend who I'd known for more than a decade. Perhaps that was to distance myself from the plagued environment I was in, the turbulent past. My time there wasn't pleasant, and it was difficult looking back, mostly marked by painful reminders. I didn't want to remember nor look back upon it at all. But for all the pain, the hardship changed me. It actually taught me a lot of life lessons. And as time went by, I began to reflect upon that period, realizing if it wasn't for that difficult time, I wouldn't have grown up. It's that painful storm that breeded growth. Reflecting also opened my perspective. First, I came to accept the responsibility of the turbulent time was of mine. As painful as the time was, it was caused by me, the primary factor, and I can't plead for innocence. And second, those unpleasant times had to do with the bad environment I was in, and others like me suffered from it too. Through the years, I started to look back and accept the past, facing those painful memories. And at one instance, I even got back with my best friend and talked about what we went through. We apologized and conceded our mistakes, and finally reconciled to the past. The entire period was an experience to avoid repeating those mistakes. It was a life course. It might have been a bitter-tasting medicine, but the patient needed it. My perspective on painful memories changed in those times, and the more I read on the works of Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud. The mind views those experiences as negative for a purpose. Our conscious marks our past experiences as good, bad, pleasant, bitter, and so, exactly like Inside Out does. The memory labeling system in the film is a perfect representation for that. They're all marked with feelings based on the experiences. And it's from those memories that our mind constructs a map of the world, a view of reality. The pleasant ones are encouragements to keep track in the functioning way, while the negative ones serve as reminders of the dangers in those points. Those painful memories are ways the mind tells us of the lessons we still need to learn from those times, that our view of the world is incomplete. They remain as painful memories until we learn from the mistakes. For most of us, addiction, family problems, turbulent times grip us. As we grow up, we lose the childlike innocence we had. Depression, sadness, and agony take control. In desperation to keep the dying spark of joy we had, that little spark of happiness, it becomes easier to lie to ourselves, rather than confront the truth. But even that won't be enough. As time goes on, our past catches up. We lose all hope. There are people out there who are facing very difficult times and pain from external circumstances, people who experience deep traumas and need psychiatric help. Whatever challenges we think we endure fades to pale in comparison with them. Those are beyond the scope of this story. For all the people in such circumstances, I really hope you get the necessary help and get through it. But for most of us, it's not external circumstances that are causing misery, but the inner cobweb of the past we haven't confronted. The only way to defeat those demons buried deep within is to face them. We can only be happy when we face the pain, our guilt, and finally let go. And only then will the burden start to lighten and our demons disappear. The most beautiful scene of Inside Out 2 is right after everything culminates. After Riley accepts and confronts those negative memories, the emotions bond together to alleviate her anxiety attack, and everything stabilizes. She then apologizes to her friends and explained all that plagued her. Then all the anxiety about losing her friends, not being good enough, not making the team, dissipates. Because none of that ever mattered. What did matter was the present, her friends that are with her now, and the passion she shares for hockey. And right after she lets go of all the burdens she carried, and all the inner demons, the scenery starts to change. The film had a dominant orange color throughout its runtime, shading the color of anxiety. But at the moment where Riley lets go and finally acknowledges the past, the orange tint starts to fade, and the sun brightens through the window, and the yellow spectrum of joy starts to shine. And without any effort, any desperation, Riley calls on to joy. All of it happens so naturally, with the trails of yellow sparks inviting joy to take control again. And Riley finally engages with a dance of happiness, enjoying the art she loves most. Hockey. Free of the anxiety of the past, she starts to live in the precious moment of the present. Because nothing ever matters except now. She finally becomes joyful. But this isn't just Riley's story. This is your story. This is our story, each and every one of us, in chase of a fleeting emotion, falling through the rabbit hole of denial, plagued with guilt and repressed past, engulfed with anxiety and devoid of peace, in desperation to be happy. And like this story, we can effortlessly be joyful again, have a play with life, but only once we let go and confront of all that plagues us, that we repress and fear, once we learn of the truth. Don't chase happiness, don't run from the past, face it, confront it, then you'll be free. Enjoy a dance of joy with the tranquil beauty of the present. Only then can you be happy.